When we return to our planet, the High Court may well sentence you to torture.
He likes movies, we like movies. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world. SeptumSin versus the world.
I'd buy that for $1.
Hi.
Greetings.
Hello, and welcome to SeptumSin versus the World, and I'm Kodabiki Jake, he is SeptumSin. I'm leading off because apparently this is my thing. We're doing another top 15 list, and I thought it would be a lot of fun in general, but especially in the wake of Miss Aretha Franklin passing, since she was definitely going to be considered for any list about covers that are awesome, it seemed like a really good time to do it. The list we're doing this week is 15 times the cover was better than the original. And it happens more than you would think, but because music is so subjective and so personal, it's very rare that there are universally accepted covers that are better. But each individual will find some. And I did a lot of research for this and found that there were quite a few that people really kept coming back to, as well as some that slipped right through the cracks. And so we're going to kick off. The first one on the list is one of the ones that I came again and again and again and again, and it's one of the ones that I strongly disagree with, so of course he's presenting it.
So yeah, we're going to do this a little bit differently than a lot of our top 15s. Instead of going back and forth, though this oddly is mostly like that, we're going to just go with the ones that we submitted, and it came together. But again, this is highly objective, I believe is the word. Or is it subjective?
Subjective.
Subjective.
Yes.
Which I might not care for. I might not care for his submissions. He might not care for my submissions. You might not care for any of our submissions.
Exactly.
You might say that the neighbor's cat belted out the best cover of some of these. So,
yes.
With that being said,
Quit
let's
that
start with
caterwauling!
number 15. Well, this one is one, I mean, the late Whitney Houston, I believe, does deserve some honor on this list. And I Will Always Love You, to me, is a very strong and powerful song. The Dolly Parton version, to me, was okay, but it does not stand out quite in the same way this does. It's on many top 10 and top 15 lists of covers for a reason. Whitney Houston, despite those faults that she may have had, was a huge loss to the music community. She had a wonderful voice.
She had a great voice.
A wonderful talent. And we will miss her, much like Aretha Franklin. So I figured this is a great way for us to start off the list.
Yeah.
And that's all I have to say on it. You've already said you're not as.
And let me clarify. I do not dislike Whitney Houston's version. In fact, I like it very much. I just feel like the idea that it somehow eclipsed Dolly completely, I don't agree with that. I think they're both wonderful versions. But you got to admit as well that Whitney's version was iconic in the 90s. And that can be part of the factor as well, the importance of a song. My next one is very important because it was a big hit at the time that it came out. It launched the career of a very talented singer who unfortunately hasn't stayed in the mainstream for, too long. But Australian singer Natalie Imbriglia's first big hit was a nice little... What's up?
Number 14.
Oh, number 14. I'm sorry. I was wondering where you were. Okay, 14.
There we go.
Natalie Imbriglia's first big hit was a song called Torn, which was a great song and a great video. I love it. Well, she was really cute and She reminded me of someone. So yeah, I really liked the video when it came out. But a lot of people don't realize that it's actually a cover. And no, it's not a cover of... I can't even remember the name of the first American band that covered the song before Natalie got to it. It was originally a Dutch song called Braendt, which actually translates burned, by Lissa Sorensen. And I love Sorensen's version. I really do. I listen to it and I'm like, this is a really good song. But Imbruglia will always be a great song in my mind. It is one of her better songs. She's had some really good songs. I wish she was still more popular.
Oh, yeah.
But definitely Torn. I was surprised to find out it was a cover, but when I did, I was like, yeah, it's got to make my list.
Number 13.
Yes.
Well, when I was in high school, many moons ago, when dinosaurs roamed the earth,
I was such a child.
I was looking for new and different experiences when it came to music. For the most part, my childhood was spent enjoying Weird Al Yankovic and Alvin and the Chipmunks. That was it, essentially. Then in early high school, I started expanding my horizons, which started with the band Queen, which to this day is still my favorite band. And oddly, none of the covers on here.
Yeah.
But another band that I got into that I felt was very unique and very interesting was They Might Be Giants. On the album Factory Showroom, they had a song that I kept playing over and over and over again. I still consider this song one of my favorite songs of all time, and that was the song New York City, which is so bright
New
and
York
cheerful.
City.
You wouldn't even expect that was actually about the real thing. But what was strange is that a number of years ago, probably about 10, 15, about more like 17 years ago, I found out from a friend of mine. He said, "Here, take a look at this. These did the original of that." And I said, "It was a cover?" And, back in the early days, we didn't have as easy access to the internet to look up everything. So I just assumed that was the original. And it was really by this band called Cub, which is a female punk band. And I listened to it, and the song itself is still pretty good. And some of the lyrics were changed around a little bit, but not a lot. And there wasn't the huge guitar solo at the end that They Might Be Giants added. But the They Might Be Giants song blows this one out of the water. The Cub song is very subdued, but so are a lot of their songs. And They Might Be Giants, their version is so full of life, so much energy to it. You just want to get up and dance when you hear this one. To me, it still is one of my favorite songs. Did you have anything on? You've heard it.
I've heard it. I can't swear that I've heard the original, but I know you've played They Might Be Giants, and yeah, it's a great song. I like it. But I am not familiar with the history of the song. Like I said, I'm not sure I've seen the original.
Number 12.
Yes.
Actually, 13. No,
Wait.
12. That's 12. You're right. It's 12.
From East Coast, we go to West Coast. To a song that actually, when I first started looking it up, I was looking to see whether the Beach Boys rendition would be a suitable upgrade from the original by the Mamas and the Papas, only to find out that the Mamas and the Papas covered the song originally. I'm speaking, of course, of one of my favorite songs, California Dreamin'. I love this song. I always have. And there are several good versions. The Beach Boys version is excellent, and I believe I heard a couple other pretty fun ones. But yes, the Mamas and the Papas covered the song. It was originally recorded by a dude named Barry McGuire, and his version is quite good. There's a lot of good versions of the song.
Oh, yeah.
But to my mind, his version is about on par with the Beach Boys, and the Mamas and the Papas just is the better version. And it really was it's an iconic song from that time period. Probably my favorite song they ever did. And there's a few groups in that time frame, the Beach Boys, the Mamas and the Papas, you know, John Denver, the Byrds, a lot of these people, they did swap around a lot of songs, and you can find covers of most of these songs by a lot of people, and a lot of them are really, really good, but only a few of them are better than the original, I think. But this was one that I saw that and I was like, yep, that's going on my list.
See, I'm not as familiar. I'm familiar with the Beach Boys version. Not as familiar with any of the other versions of the song. So, that's all I have to say about that one. Now, number 11. While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Performed by Martin Luther McCoy and some work with Jim Sturgis in the movie Across the Universe. Most of you should be familiar with the creators of this one, the Beatles. I believe it was on the White Album, wasn't it?
I do believe you're right, yes.
The problem with the White Album, in my opinion, is I am one of the few people who considers it highly overrated. I feel like many of the songs are songs that they were just throwing on. A lot of them didn't even have, for me, that studio finish to it. I really did feel like a lot of the songs that they put in there really did not get fully finished in their general. I just felt like all the other albums were much more polished. I felt like this one was just stuffed full of content.
It definitely was one of the more experimental albums. That's
definitely in that. But Across the Universe had a way of taking those unpolished ones and making them more polished, and in some cases shine even more brightly. And this one in particular, the emotion of this song came out spectacularly well. I really did love this version. If you have not seen Across the Universe, it is and has maintained as my favorite film for a while now. You need to check it out.
It is a good movie. And actually, movie-related covers are something that I came across a lot. And a lot of them were really good. And I will say, Across the Universe had some phenomenal ones. Wasn't it Bono who did Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds?
Yes.
And I like that version of that song. And there were some other... But I beg to differ on this one, because to me, While My Guitar Gently Weeps ranks up there with Eleanor Rigby as the best songs the Beatles ever recorded. And when you get into my top 30, it's hard to find a cover better than the original. You know, and there are a few songs like that. I've heard some wonderful renditions of John Denver's Take Me Home Country Roads. I've heard some wonderful version. I like Disturbed's version of the Sound of Silence. But there's no way it can match the original.
I almost put the one from, what was it? Not The Wind Rises, the Whispers of the Heart.
Whispers of the Heart,
I almost put that on there, but to me it really wasn't better, so I can't.
Well, Olivia Newton-John opened the movie, and then they had that reworked version that she had, and they're both great versions.
They are great versions.
Yeah.
Or the Japanese version that they played at the end.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That was like, I think that was like her reworked version or whatever.
But still not quite.
The
number 10.
Yes. This is one, I think, probably one of the most undisputed upgrades on my list. You will find this again and again and again on lists of covers that are better than the original, covers that improved on the original. And the original, in this case, was a fine song, but the cover became like an 80s staple. And I'm talking, of course, of Soft Cell's version of Tainted Love. The original was by Gloria Jones, and it was sort of like a, I can't remember if it was more soul. It was like 60s soul kind of. It's not a bad song at all. But then Soft Cell came along and did that weird 80s synth version that is like synonymous with 80s. But it's one of the rare examples of 80s good. You know what I mean? and it's one of the things I was looking for was covers that truly turned a song on its head, and this one did, you know. And that's one thing I will give Whitney Houston's version, I Will Always Love You. That turned the song on its head, you know. And there are versions like that will pop up here and there on the list, but this was one that I always liked the song. It's never been my favorite song, but I like the song. But as a cover, I'm like, it is one of the,
So, number 9.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, no comment. Haven't heard it.
You've never heard Tainted Love?
And no versions.
I know you've heard versions because I think it was Looking for an Echo that did it.
Oh, then maybe I have heard
You've heard a cappella at the very least.
That it never stuck with me, apparently. Now, speaking of rules, we never really did set the groundwork for it. The only rule that came with it was a cover song that was better than the original.
Yeah.
So, to me, that included mashups.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite mashups, hard to believe it's from Glee. I don't consider many of the Glee covers to be better than the original.
No.
This, however, took both of those songs and created something, to me, that was superior to both. And I really like the Bon Jovi song. And Confessions is okay. But it is basically It's My Life, Confessions Part 2, a mashup that they did with Glee. So Bon Jovi and Usher, of course. This was on an episode where the nurse they had been doing a war, and the nurse was giving them stimulants. So they were all hopped up and drugged, and they were just moving at high energy and high speed. But to me, this is a song that just jams together like nothing else. It fits well together. They have a lot of good mashups in the show Glee.
They did.
The one that they did...
Didn't they do at least one
Thriller,
mashup episode?
Yeah, they did. The girls
Yeah.
had one too, which I thought was good energy, but I still didn't feel it was better than the two.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one that was close, which was they did Michael Jackson's Thriller, and I think I can't think of the other one.
Yeah, it was. I know what you're talking about.
Yes.
That was a good recording. It was Thriller and
it was an excellent performance
I
too.
can't think of
Which Glee had a lot of good performances. For its flaws, Glee did have some good music at times, and this one I listened to over and over again when I listen to music, and just the energy. It just reinvigorates it. And as much as I love It's My Life, I've listened to 3 or 4 versions that Bon Jovi did of it. He did a lot of versions of this song.
really.
And still, out of all of it, this is the best one. You've heard that version.
Oh yeah, no, I probably saw the episode. I saw a fair bit of the show.
We were watching it together for a while.
Yeah, I think probably my favorite one. I will not go out on a limb and say this was better than the original by any means, but I thoroughly enjoyed Matthew Morrison and Neil Patrick Harris doing Aerosmith's Dream On.
yeah,
I
that's a
love
good-
that. That was fun.
That's hard to
But,
beat the original.
Oh
one.
yeah, that may be my favorite Aerosmith song.
So,
Okay.
number 8.
Speaking of songs, they've had a lot of versions. Okay, now, one of the fun things about this project was I did a lot of research, and I learned a lot about the history of songs I didn't know before. And my next song is a song written by Chris Christopherson called Me and Bobby McGee. Now, of course, a lot of people simplify it and think it was a Christopherson song that was covered and made popular by Janis Joplin. Not entirely true. The original recording was by Roger Miller. The secondary recording was by Kenny Rogers in the first edition. Chris Christopherson was about the 6th or 7th person to record the song.
All right.
And Joplin was about 4 people after him. So in that span of about 4 years, the song was covered a dozen times. And then it kept getting covered. And it kept getting covered. And there's so many versions of this song. And some of them are really good. Some of them are not so good. Most of the ones I listened to were really good. But I have to say, Janis Joplin's version is probably the best one I've heard. And it is also, this is another little bit of movie trivia, or not music trivia, that I learned that I had never known. Me and Bobby McGee was released, I believe, just after Janis Joplin's death. It was the second hit single released posthumously. The prior one was Otis Redding Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. I had never realized that, but yeah, Roger Miller did a fine version. Kenny Rogers did a fine version. Christopherson did a fine version. But Joplin came along and turned the song on its head and blew them out of the water. And her version became the template that most people have used since then.
Yes.
And I have heard some off-the-wall ones. The Grateful Dead did a very off-the-wall version. But they did with a lot of the stuff they covered.
Grateful Dead, yeah. They were off-the-wall by nature.
Yes, but Me and Bobby McGee is a fun song, and I actually think, sadly, I think I was introduced to it by Leanne Rhymes' version. So hers is pretty good, but it's nowhere near on the same level as the others. But there you go.
All right. Well,
oh yeah, I've got more.
Number 7.
7.
Actually, you want to know something real quick?
What's up?
You know a song that's been covered a lot that I don't see on this list? "Light My Fire" by the Doors. There have been a lot of covers of that song.
I do have a Doors cover coming up on my honorable mentions, but "Light My Fire" is one I'm not familiar with very many covers.
Oh, there have been at least 4 or 5, and several of them country.
I think a lot of the Doors stuff got covered because it's awesome. So yeah.
All right, number 7.
Okay.
I know this song.
Or actually, what was the one? What was the one today that I was looking up? Oh, jeez. There was a song. I think it was Killing. I think it was "Killing Him Softly" that I looked up today. That there were like 20 versions. No, it wasn't "Killing Him Softly," but there was a song I looked up today where there were like 20 versions released in a 2-year span. It was insane. It might have been that one. 73, 74. It's crazy. But anyway, my next one is one of my absolute favorite recordings ever. And it's the one that I have that is pulled directly from a musical. The original was pulled from a musical. Disney is known for creating some pretty memorable songs.
That's racist.
Well, this one could be. But you know what? I looked and looked, and it doesn't seem to have a reputation for it, which is weird. But The Jungle Book, of course, yielded at least two indisputable musical classics. Bare Necessities, of course, was a wonderful song. I do feel a little icky about this one, but again, everything I've read leads me to believe that no one really considered this song too bad, except maybe Walt Disney himself, who I think died just about when the movie was released. Yeah. But at any rate, there is the song that King Louie sings late in the movie to Mowgli, "I Want to Be Like You."
Yeah.
And it was Louis Prima was voicing King Louie, and they did a fine job of the song, and I loved it when I was a kid. Like I said, now I'm kind of... But I will say this. Big Bad Voodoo Daddy took the song and made it a neo-swing classic. It is the best recording musically of any Disney song I've ever heard. And I love it. And I kind of ignore the lyrics, honestly, when I listen to it. But the music is so awesome. And, so, make of that what you will. This was an example of someone took a song and just completely reinvented the music and just came up with something phenomenally awesome. And again, anything Disney, at least from the days of Walt Disney, nothing escapes perfectly.
Yeah, well,
unfortunately, but
it's a bunch of apes telling a human boy, "We want to be like you."
Yeah. Well, of course, the gist of it is they want fire.
Yeah,
which,
but
it's
they want fire so that they can be more like humans.
Yes.
And and just the style that the song was done in, and knowing Walt Disney's past, I'm sorry, but with the past history of it, I'm sure that there was something racist involved in that song.
There probably was, which shocks me that it doesn't have a reputation for that. Believe me, I've looked. I don't know. Maybe I've missed something. I don't know.
All right.
But,
Number 6. Also for you.
Yes. And from the same, actually, almost the exact same time period. I mean, maybe within a year or two of the original release of I Want to Be Like You. Bob Dylan has written a crap ton of awesome songs over the years. He is a Nobel laureate now. He's the first musician ever given that honor because he is a phenomenal writer. And he has, therefore, had a lot of covers of his songs. And let's face it, Dylan has a very distinctive voice, and he is a very talented musician. But added together, his songs are often a little underwhelming. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're awesome. But a lot of his covers improve upon the source material. And he has actually himself been magnanimous enough to occasionally give credit where it's due. And I had a couple of Dylan songs that one of them I'm going to save for if we do another list like this in the future. I really want to use, but I'll do that later. But the one that everyone seems to agree on, because there's a few that are potential, but the one that everyone really seems to agree on is that Jimi Hendrix Experience knocked All Along the Watchtower right out of the park.
Oh, yeah.
It really, it's pretty much Hendrix's signature song. I mean, it really is, and it's the guitar solos he does and everything, and even his own vocals were not the best. But the way he delivered the song, he gave it so much more energy than Dylan did. And I love Dylan. I love Dylan's original version. It's a great song, and I love it. But Hendrix's version is pretty awesome. It's pretty phenomenal. And it is one of probably the most universally acclaimed upgrades, I think, of any. And Dylan himself has said he's not only said that Hendrix took a decent song and made it better. Dylan said this, but Dylan actually has retrofitted the song, and when he performs it, since he's performed it, he covers Hendrix's version. So that's a pretty good compliment, I think, for any cover. And yeah, it's just an awesome song too. Yeah.
So, no comment.
Can't believe he doesn't know that song.
You know, it's funny because I'm sure that there are some of these I have heard in passing, but it never hooked me.
That song has been heavily used on movie soundtracks, so I guarantee you've heard it.
And again, hearing it and liking it enough for it to stick up here is a big thing.
This
for
is
me.
true.
And I'm sure I've heard all of these at one point or another. But knowing it is a different thing. Number 5, which we both know.
Yes. In fact, I know this version, but I probably haven't heard it for years.
We talk about nostalgia being a huge drive. And to me, the quintessential version of this song is the quintessential version because of nostalgia. To me, there is no other version, though I have heard the original performance and several other covers of this song. Of course, the original being Gladys Knight and the Pips for the song I Heard It Through the Grapevine.
Mm-hmm.
The version that I am most familiar with is Buddy Miles's version, which was a Raisin campaign by a group called the California Raisins. Yes. For those of you who aren't familiar, most of you millennials probably, actually, most millennials were born in 1980 or above, so you're a millennial.
If you were from the 80s, you knew the California Raisins.
So a lot of millennials
are
from the
90s, you might not.
So yeah, the next generation beyond the millennials would not have heard of them.
Yes.
But this particular group, it was big. At one point in the 80s, claymation was a huge thing.
Yeah.
everything was claymation. They all wanted to jump on. I still have the California Raisins Christmas special on DVD. And
I need to get that.
this is just spectacular. If you ever want to hear a fun version of this song, go to YouTube, look up I Heard It Through the Grapevine, California Raisins, right there. One of the things I'm going to do special in the description down below, go below the credits section. I will try and put a link to each one of these on YouTube so you can hear. I'm not going to do the original version. You can look up the originals, but I will put a link to the version that we're talking about here, because otherwise I'm going to be sitting here all night working on that. But take a look at it. I'm going to include this list also in the YouTube description so you can utilize it. All right, so Number 4. This time I go more than once.
I do want to make one comment because I grew up with the California Raisins too, and I love those. We had the cassette and we wore it out. We loved that tape, and that was always my favorite song they did. But the song was probably not Gladys Knight. I think I've heard her version and it was quite good. But it was probably made even more famous by Marvin Gaye. Oh, yeah. And then it was covered by CCR. And both of those versions are phenomenal. And it's really hard to think which... I'd probably go with Marvin Gaye as my favorite. But if we do the one of covers that are good but not better than the original, that's where I would probably put this California Raisins one. Because it is a great cover. And it's worth checking out. Yeah.
So... Number 4. Yeah. This is one I think we do disagree with, or semi-disagree with. There was an abomination back in the day, and it was called Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Now, for those of you who are getting ready to get on your keyboard and say it was a great album by the Beatles, no. I am not talking about the album. I am talking about that abysmal movie that to me is one of the worst movies ever. Yet it has a spectacular amount of credits when it comes to musicians.
Yeah.
It is amazing that with this much star power, it is such a low ball movie. And many of the covers are okay and even abysmal at times. But there are a few that I thought were good, if not better than the original. Alice Cooper actually covering, I think it was Dreams. I can't think of the word, the one that he covered. That one, Because. He covered Because. I really liked that version, but I didn't consider it that much of an improvement. It was maybe a slight bit over.
Right.
This one I still feel is way over it, which is Aerosmith covering Come Together. Abbey Road was a great album. I'm not going to dispute that, but I feel that the version of Aerosmith that Aerosmith did not just cover the feeling that the Beatles had in the song, but they amplified that feeling. It gave it put a little bit of a spin on it, making it to me the superior version of the two. But again, take a listen, you'll know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it'd be nice if we could actually play these songs for you, but YouTube.
Oh, YouTube would strike this down in a minute.
I have to admit, and I'm probably going to get some hate mail for this, I have trouble telling the two apart. If I hear it come on the radio, I don't usually know right away which version it is. So to me, I like both versions, but to me, there isn't a clear winner, But that's just, me. I must be missing something with this song. I love the song.
Well.
But the next song, you couldn't get much more different from the original.
Number 3.
God, okay.
Johnny Cash and Nine Inch Nails.
Well, wait. Oh, man, you spoiled it. Okay, whatever. Well, okay, so when I was in college, I had a pretty cool little gig. I worked as a game room attendant. which basically meant I sat there and listened to music all day and occasionally got people in line and got to play pool and their little Spider-Man video game that was super popular back then. And I was in charge of change, which hardly anyone did any change. Sometimes I'll bring my own music, and sometimes I would just have the TV on. And at the time, I was a much bigger fan of country than I am now. So I would usually have one of the country video channels on if I had something. And there was one day where I remember this, and you know a song's awesome if you remember the first time you heard it.
Oh, yeah.
I was sitting there doing my thing, and I hear like the opening chords. I'm like, damn, that sounds cool. And I look up the screen, and I see this older than dirt dude who looks like death warmed over, surrounded by grapes and all this ornate decorations and everything. And it was Johnny Cash getting ready to do Hurt, which had just been released. And it's a phenomenal music video. If you've never seen that music video, check it out. It is a great music video. But the song, but he really did. It was one of the last things he recorded before his passing. And he looked every bit like he was on the way out. But that, in a way, that just added to the song. It really did. He did have a great voice. It wasn't perfect, but it was very deep and very expressive. And he took a song from Nine Inch Nails that was from their album The Downward Spiral, and it is a downward spiral. It's a bleeding depressing song about shooting up and trying to OD is my understanding of it. And Johnny Cash took that and turned it on its head. He did a very simple, spare, minor chords, guitar, just him and his guitar pretty much, and it's probably the best recording he ever did, and it's a phenomenal song. I like the Nine Inch Nails version. I've never been a big fan of theirs, but I like that song. But just this is such a huge improvement. Huge improvement. I just, it's a great song, and for the purposes of this list, is one of the best covers I've ever heard. Yeah.
Well, number 2. This was my number 1 on my list. Which, we're talking about bands that didn't care much for. And the band that did this cover, the guy who did this cover, I really do not care for. Even today. I think there's only one other song of the individuals that I somewhat like.
Yeah.
And to say this one is one of the highest on the list means a lot. And it's because of that it did get my number 1. I was watching The House on Haunted Hill. You talk about remembering the first time you hear this. I went to see that in theaters, and I believe that was when I was at Roanoke. I had gone to see it, and it was just was a really cool, scary film. I was finally starting to get into scary movies, because before that I was scared of scary movies. I couldn't watch them. So I watched this thing, and it was just an experience for me in theaters. Even though the movie itself is not exactly the greatest, and of course I mean the remake of House on Haunted Hill, I'm not quite that old that I would have seen the Vincent Price version in theaters when it came out. But then came the credits. I actually stuck through the credits because of this cover. And that was the cover of Sweet Dreams by Marilyn Manson. Now, I was familiar with the original by the Eurythmics. And it is a creepy song. But to me, Marilyn Manson took that and made that into a scary song.
Yeah.
And to me, there's no other horror anthem quite like that. There are some others that I did find pretty cool for covers like that, but none, to me, were there. I mean, I think the only other song I liked by Marilyn Manson was Beautiful People, which
I believe he also covered This Is Halloween and did a really good job with that. You know, that was kind of creepy.
So he has that way of doing things.
Yeah.
And again, I don't like the man's music, but this to me was excellent.
I used to avoid the dude like a plague. To me, no. But over the years, I've become a little more open-minded. And I will admit, I love this cover, but there are two reasons why I didn't consider it. One, there's a weird little breakdown in there where he does like this weird sort of strangled voice, and I could have done without that part altogether. The rest of the song is awesome. And the fact is, I just love the Eurythmics version. It's really hard to improve on that in my mind. I like Manson's version a lot, but to me, it's not the better one. But I know what you mean. Like it is creepy, and it probably would be a great horror movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So next up is honorable mention. So we're going to do this again a little bit differently. We both have some leftovers on our lists.
Leftovers.
So what we're going to do is I'm going to let Jacob go first, and he's going to just run down them. Who did the original? Who did the cover? Briefly, why we like, and just move through.
Yeah. Yep. Just quick little notes. Some of these will be more controversial than others. I know one in particular will be. I am a huge fan of Nickel Creek, and they have done some great covers. I love Carrie Newcomer's version of I Should Have Known Better, but Nickel Creek took the song, turned it on its head. I loved their version before I ever knew it was a cover, so I had to put that on there. My inclusion of the Beatles is their cover of the Top Notes' Twist and Shout. More accurately, they covered the Isley Brothers' Twist and Shout, but the Top Notes were the first to record the song. The Beatles, to my mind, did better than the Isley Brothers, but both of them kicked the Top Notes' asses with that song. And, of course, talk about movie, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I'll always associate that song, I grew up loving Dobie Gray's Drift Away. I didn't even know until recently it was a cover. John Henry Kurtz did a great job, straight up country song actually, but Dobie Gray's version kicks its butt. I was introduced to this song, Fell in Love with a Boy by Joss Stone. It's a cover of Fell in Love with a Girl by the White Stripes. And I know this will be blasphemy to some, but I just don't care for their song. But I love Joss Stone's version, and it's totally different. Next up, Alicia Keys took a relatively nondescript, boring Prince song, which I love Prince, don't get me wrong. Some of his songs are boring. How Come You Don't Love Me Anymore? And How Come You Don't Call Me Anymore? She came up with the song How Come You Don't Call Me? And she is a kick-ass artist. She got a great video for this. I like it a lot. Another movie connection, two movie connections stand out my list. We mentioned The Doors earlier. I love The Doors. I love The Doors song The People Are Strange. But to my mind, Echo and the Bunnymen did it better. They did it for the Lost Boys soundtrack. And the difference is the fact that their version is Stranger. The Doors do more of a straight-ahead rock song. Yeah. And this is a song that benefits from a little bit of weirdness, And then the last one comes from this weekend. There's a brand new cover that's on my list. I went to see Crazy Rich Asians, and they covered a whole bunch of stuff for that movie. They actually went on YouTube and found some people on YouTube who had done covers. And I think that's really cool. They tried to promote some lesser-known people. It was really cool. But this one, I don't know if this was how they found Catherine Ho, but they recorded a song. She recorded a version of Coldplay's Yellow for the movie. And there is there's a fun little story about that. I'm not going to go into it for time constraints, but look it up. Definitely look it up. But I have always kind of been bleh about Coldplay's version.
I never really...
I'm not excited about it at all. But Catherine Ho took it, turned it Chinese. Chinese language version. It's more lively. Huh? It doesn't sound like she's asleep like Coldplay did. So it's better. So I wanted to go ahead and mention that one.
All right. Well, I'm gonna run through these real quick, just as in general. Lots of versions of Proud Mary. John Fogerty did an excellent job. A lot of these people did an excellent job, but Ike and Tina Turner, they kicked it out of the park, made it their own. As far as I'm concerned, there is no real other version. Less Than Jake did an album called Greased, somewhat parody album, but they are known for doing punk covers of a lot of songs. They did We Go Together, and though there are a lot of songs on that album that are hilarious and awesome, this one took the energy of that song, did it times 5, and just how they get it when they go in there, it's like, oh, dangity dang shabab, what's that mean? I don't know. As they go through. Again, Less Than Jake on the list again. Great punk band with some ska notes and elements. Did a cover of Cheap Trick's Surrender. Cheap Trick did an excellent song with Surrender, but their version, I still say, Less Than Jake nailed it, moved it forward, made it their own. Summer of '69, again, one that has been covered many, many times. Once of which I didn't even know Bryan Adams was the original maker of the song. But Bowling for Soup, which many of you probably don't know, did a cover of this on their album. To me, it's the definitive version. I still listen to it occasionally to this day. Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, they are a cover band with a bunch of punk artists that got together and decided we're going to do song covers.
I love their name.
And one of the best ones that they did was John Denver's Leaving on a Jet Plane.
Not better
But
than the original.
you gotta take it, you gotta look at these songs. To me, many of them are better than the original because making a song punk makes it better than the original, unless it's punk. Especially if it's country. Another one that I probably would have put higher on the list, but I thought of it last, so therefore I said, well, if I thought of it last, it's going to be at the end of my list. Another mashup, but one that is spectacular. It's one of my favorite songs of all time. Somewhere Over the Rainbow by Is, right?
I have no idea. I don't know what version you're talking about.
Oh, wow. You don't know that version? It's the one on the ukulele. It's the... you should know... Yeah. And that version has been covered, by the way, where he mashes up Somewhere Over the Rainbow and It's a Wonderful World. So Harold Arlen and Louis Armstrong.
I was wondering why you had Louis Armstrong listed there, so because you only had Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
That's the name of it.
Oh, okay.
So, moving to the last of that, again, horror-inspired. There was a film called Gothica. At the end of it, there was a cover that someone did, Behind Blue Eyes. I love the Who's version of this, and it was really tough. It's actually only edges it out a teeny bit, so the blowing out of the water, it's a good thing that wasn't on the list. It would not have made the list otherwise.
Okay.
But Behind Blue Eyes, Limp Bizkit did an excellent cover, very uncharacteristic.
It is a good cover
for that group.
It is a good cover. The like I said, definitely not better than the Who, but yeah. So is that pretty much it?
That's the honorable mentions.
Okay, very good. Oh yeah. We did honorable mentions. We gotta do the big one.
Yep.
And in case you didn't already guess by the hints we dropped,
only one on all of our.
There's only one that was on both of our lists. But again, we wanted to do this out partly as an honor to the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. She has covered a lot of songs over the years, and in fact, I found, what was the one I saw the other day that I was like, I think it was Money, might have been Money, It's What I Want. I think was the one I read today. She has done some really interesting ones, and of course, Natural Woman was a cover of Carole King's song. But the big one that not only was a definitive song for her, a definitive song for that era, a phenomenal upgrade from the original, and just a damn good song, was Respect. The song was originally by Otis Redding, and it was a good recording. Yes, it was. Otis Redding was a very good musician. He did some very good stuff. It's just, the song was originally basically a dude kind of trying to, just saying like, hey, what's up, sort of. It was kind of like a guy grousing about, just sort of complaining about, I don't get no respect, sort of thing. And then
no respect.
Exactly. And Aretha just took that and turned it on its head, and made like the ultimate feminist song, pretty much. It was like, not to mention that musically, she changed it up a lot and made it more lively and gave it a backing chorus and just all kind of stuff.
To me, my first introduction is where many got their first introduction, which was in the Blues Brothers movie, where she performed that and just belted it out. And again, to me, no better cover than this particular one.
Sad thing is, I think my introduction was through one of the various Looney Tunes cartoons or whatever. Because I remember it was in one of those. I didn't actually see the Blues Brothers until high school, and I hated it the first time I saw it. But when I went back and watched it, I was like, oh, that's a good movie.
Classic.
Yeah, it is. And but so is that all you had to say on that, or?
Yeah, essentially. Okay. It's you covered most of the other bases, so it worked out well. Okay. So that's it.
I do want to do one quick little addendum, because I know with your your reviews and whatnot, you do like your shout outs to YouTube channels and all that kind of stuff. And I just wanted to do a quick little shout out in the spirit of covers and cover artists and all this kind of stuff. And, as I said briefly during the honorable mentions, I did go this weekend to see Crazy Rich Asians. During the wedding scene, the performing band, the lead singer who's singing during the wedding, she's singing Elvis's "I Can't Stop," I Can't Help Falling in Love, which is a really good song, and that's had a lot of covers over the years.
Yes, it has.
Her name is Kina Granis. She's a Japanese-American musician who she's got a lot of videos on YouTube. She does the really high quality, high production. I just started watching them last night, and I've watched a few of them, and I like what I've seen so far. She did Nickel Creek, and anyone who covers Nickel Creek and does it well, that's all I need to know. but she's I wanted to do a quick little YouTube shout out, because I don't ever really do them, and it seems appropriate to this one. So definitely check her out, Kina Granis. Check it, Yep.
Well, with that being said, if of course you like these videos, give us a like, share, subscribe, and of course, comment. What is your favorite cover that you feel blew the original out of the water? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you there.
Yes.
Take care.
Goodbye.